In Cheshire, Michigan, Julie Cowell helped animal control with a raid of a puppy mill. And when they, in a residential home, when they got there, she reported later that they just kept coming and coming. And by the end of the day, they had seized 350 dogs, 12 cats, and 2 birds. And when they had brought these animals into the shelters, which were Shih Tzus and Pomeranian mixes, they were covered in their own urine and feces, and their mouths were coated. They were in poor condition. Their mouths were rotting due to poor nutrition. And there are stories like this all across the United States of animals being treated in really bad conditions. So, hello, my name's Cameron. And I have 2 rescue dogs that were rescued from Maricopa County Pound. And they both were sent to be euthanized. One because he had kennel cough, which is very easy to fix. You just give him medicine and they're fine. And the other one due to overpopulation. They didn't have enough room for him. But luckily they were rescued and I got them, and they're the best dogs ever. So today we're going to discuss the problems of overpopulation in animal shelters, what the causes are due to puppy mills, and what we can do about it, the solutions. And so let's begin with the problem. The problem is there are millions of dogs and cats living in shelters today. The American Humane Society estimates about 6 to 8 million dogs in animal shelters, and they euthanize about 3 to 4 million. So that's almost 1 in every 2 dogs and cats that enter the shelters is euthanized. So half of them never walk out of that shelter alive again. In this picture, this dog is actually being euthanized. So this is, and another big problem is the dumping of pets, pet owners. They're dumping their pets into the shelters just because they've decided they're moving, they can't take care of them, and they're just, so they bring them in there. And this can actually be really stressful on a dog when they're brought into shelters. It's so highly stressful, they're scared, they don't know what's going on, and they end up starting to have behavioral problems, they get sick easier, and when this happens, they actually end up getting euthanized because their adoption rate is so low because nobody wants to adopt a pet that has issues or is sick. So now that we know what the problems are, let's look at what the causes are. So the second cause of this is puppy mills. Puppy mills are what the ASPCA calls a large commercial dog rig operation that places profit over the well-being of animals. And as you can see in this picture, they're kept in very small cages, and it's horrible. The Animal Welfare Act of 1966 is supposed to protect the breeders and make sure that they're licensed, and they're supposed to kind of regulate them, but there's loopholes. And what ends up happening is for commercial breeding, all they have to do is make sure that that cage is 6 inches wider than the dog all around, and they don't ever have to let the dog out of the cage. That dog will live its entire life in the cage, popping out litter after litter, without ever setting foot on the ground, without ever having to leave that cage, and it's neglected and it lives in filth. Another cause is irresponsible pet owners. 35% of pet owners will not euthanize or spay their animal. And usually they don't think they're causing this problem because they don't think their cat or dog is going to breed, but in actuality when their dog or cat goes into heat or a male dog smells that, it's like they will do whatever they can to get out of the house. They will destroy it. It's very hard on them, and it's almost cruel to do that. And it's cruel to not spay or neuter your pet just because they're going to end up, if it has puppies, half of those puppies are going to end up in a shelter and they're going to be euthanized. So now that we know what the causes are and the problems, let's take a look at what we can do for some solutions. So one of the solutions, I would say, if you own a dog or cat and they are not neutered or spayed, please make sure that you do that. It's very important to not contribute to the overpopulation of these dogs and cats in shelters. 80% of you agreed that breeding needs to be regulated, which I truly believe it needs to be regulated, and puppy mills should be illegal. And so that was to SurveyMonkey, that all of you agreed that this should be regulated. But since those laws are not in place right now, I encourage all of you to, if you're going to get a dog or a cat, to make sure that you adopt one. And this actually helps. Like when you buy from a pet store, you're basically buying a puppy mill cat or dog. Like that's where they come from, because they're commercially bred. So when you do that, you're supporting animal cruelty and you're supporting the abuse of animals. So I encourage you to adopt and rescue one that needs a home. Another thing that you can do that helps with spaying and neutering of animals is you can have, there's a license, the pet-friendly license in Arizona, and part of the proceeds, I think it's $17, goes to the fund set up to help get cats and dogs spayed in Arizona. Also, according to the legislation and Arizona government, they, and that was found off of the Humane Society of Arizona, that Arizona does mandate that any dog or cat adopted in Arizona has to be spayed or neutered. So that's really good. So you don't have to pay for that if you adopt them. This dog was actually found from a puppy mill here in Topaz, Arizona. And so he was rescued. And here's just a few other pictures. So now that we've talked about the problems, the causes, and then what we can all do to pitch in and make sure that we cut down on the overpopulation of shelters and euthanizing of dogs. So we've talked about the problems, what you guys can do. I've talked about the causes of puppy mills and not to support them, and I've talked about some solutions. So I just encourage you that if you can, support and take care of, or adopt a dog, that you please adopt and not buy from a store.